They say when you work nights long enough, you start to see things that aren't there. Shapes moving outside the windows, whispers in the vents, lights flickering just a little too long to be normal. I used to believe that too. Thought it was just the sleep deprivation, the quiet, the way your mind unravels when you spend 8 hours with no one to talk to but yourself. But what happened that winter, what I lived through, wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't a bad dream or some weird mental break. I wish to God it had been. I was 35 when it happened. Had just started the night shift at a private security firm in Ohio. Not the kind where you carry a gun or chase people through parking lots. This was softer work. I monitored surveillance cameras at a storage facility on the outskirts of town. 3 buildings, long rows of metal roll-up units surrounded by a chain-link fence and motion-activated floodlights. The kind of place people rent when they've got more junk than space, or secrets they don't want in their house. I worked alone in a small office at the center of the property with a wall of monitors in front of me, 9 cameras, 2 bathrooms, microwave, coffee pot. My job was simple: watch the feed, log activity, make hourly rounds, and call the cops if something sketchy happened. I had the graveyard shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 5 nights a week. Not glamorous, but it paid better than anything else I could get with my record. I'd been there about 6 months when things started going sideways. It was the middle of January, cold enough to kill your battery if you left the headlights on too long. There'd been a storm that week. Snow, ice, blackouts across the county. We were one of the few places still running because of a backup generator. That meant people came in more often than usual, checking their stuff, pulling out space heaters, winter clothes, tools. We weren't supposed to let tenants stay more than 15 minutes, but sometimes I gave them extra time if they looked half frozen. Figured we all had to survive somehow. That night, a man came through the gate around 1:40 a.m. I remember because I was filling out the logbook when I saw his headlights on the monitor. His name was Brett R., according to the tenant list. Rented unit 1 and 9th C for almost a year. Always paid cash. Never gave me any trouble. He buzzed in like usual, drove straight down to the 3rd building, parked in front of his unit. Stayed in the truck for a minute or two before getting out. That was the first thing that struck me as odd. He just sat there. Lights on. Engine running, like he was trying to talk himself into something. Then he got out, walked around to the back of the truck and opened the tailgate. That's when I saw her. A woman, mid-20s maybe. Pale, long dark hair, duct tape over her mouth. Wrists bound. She was lying on a blue tarp, half covered by a wool blanket. She didn't move when the wind hit her. I froze. There are moments in life that hit you like an iron bar. No warning, no buildup, just impact. That was one of them. I stared at the screen, heart hammering, throat dry, unsure if what I was seeing was real. Brett looked around, didn't see the camera above his unit, then grabbed her under the arms and dragged her toward the storage door. He was moving fast, but not panicked. Methodical, like he'd done it before. I reached for the phone, fingers shaking, and called 911. The operator answered. I gave my name, location, and told her exactly what I saw. "He's putting a body into the unit," I said. "She might still be alive. You need to get someone out here now." She asked if I could approach safely. I said no. My job was to observe. No weapons, no backup. She told me to stay inside, keep the doors locked, and remain on the line until officers arrived. I went back to the screen. Brett had rolled the door open and was dragging the woman inside. The unit itself was dim. He must have had a battery-powered lantern or flashlight inside because I saw shadows moving, but no details. Then the door slammed shut. Silence. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Still no sign of the cops. I kept watching, listening. My palms were slick with sweat. At 2:03 a.m., the storage unit door rolled back open. Brett stepped out alone. He pulled the tarp out after him, now balled up, tossed it in the back of his truck. No sign of the woman. Then he stood there for a long time, just stood, staring into the cold night air like he was waiting for something. Then he looked up, right at the camera. It was the only time I'd seen someone do that. Not a glance, but a direct stare. Like he knew, like he could see me through the feed. I ducked below the desk, heart in my throat, still clutching the phone. "He saw the camera," I whispered to the operator. She was calm, reassuring. Said officers were en route, but icy roads were slowing everything down. I peeked up again. Brett was walking toward the main office. My office. I locked the door, killed the lights, and waited in the dark. Footsteps approached. Slow, crunching through the snow, getting closer. Then they stopped. Right outside. He didn't knock, didn't say anything, just stood there. I held my breath for maybe a minute, maybe 5. I lost track. Then, just as silently, the footsteps moved away, back toward his truck. I watched through the peephole, careful not to breathe too loud. He climbed in, sat for a while, then drove off without closing the unit. I waited until the red glow of his taillights disappeared before unlocking the door and stepping outside. Unit 109C was still open. I should have waited for the cops, should have stayed inside, but I needed to know. I walked down the icy lot, flashlight shaking in my hand, and stepped into the unit. It was clean. Too clean. Empty, except for a few boxes, a folded mattress, and a strong metallic scent I recognized from years ago. Blood. There was a small dark smear on the concrete near the back corner, already starting to freeze, but no sign of her. No body. No duct tape. Nothing. By the time the police arrived, he was long gone. I showed them the footage. They took the drive and promised an investigation. Turns out, Brett R. wasn't Brett R. at all. Fake ID, fake address, prepaid burner phone. He'd rented the unit under a stolen identity almost a year earlier. They never found him. The woman's face was grainy in the video, no way to run it through missing persons. They didn't even know her name. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her face, frozen in shock, the way he looked into the camera, like he wanted me to see. A few days later, I got called into corporate. They reviewed the footage, asked me what I did and why. I told them everything. They nodded, said they appreciated my vigilance. Then they fired me, said I'd violated protocol by leaving the office, that I'd endangered myself. No severance, no reference, just gone. I've tried moving on. I got a job at a gas station now. Nights, of course. That's all I know. But some nights, when it's slow, I'll look at the security monitor behind the counter. I'll watch the pump area, the dumpsters, the rear alley, and sometimes, just for a second, I'll catch a glimpse of a truck. Same make, same model, same taillights. Always in the distance. Always driving away. Like he's reminding me that I saw him, and that someday he might come back. I never talk about this. Never. It's been almost 2 years now, and I still flinch when someone knocks on my door late at night. Sometimes I even sleep with my phone flashlight on, just pointed at the door. Stupid, I know. But something happened to me on a delivery run. Something I can't shake. I've tried to rationalize it, I've tried therapy, I've even tried just telling myself it didn't happen the way I remember it. But it did. I know it did. I was working nights as a pizza delivery driver in Chillicothe, Ohio. Real small town stuff. I dropped out of college 2 semesters shy of a bachelor's in computer science because of some pretty bad anxiety and depression stuff. So I moved back in with my mom and stepdad, took the first job I could find, and just tried to keep my head above water. This pizza place, Tony's, was one of those 50-year-old joints that still used a cash register from the 90s. My boss was old school Italian, didn't trust credit cards or apps, so all our deliveries were phoned in, mostly drunks, late night shift workers, or the regular crowd ordering pepperoni and sausage like clockwork. This happened in November. It was a Thursday night. Cold. I remember that part really well. I had my hoodie under my delivery jacket, gloves on even inside the car. It had rained earlier, and the roads were that shiny black, half-frozen kind of slick that makes your tires hiss. Around 11:50 p.m., the phone rang. I wasn't on phones, that was Jessie's job, but she was in the back arguing with Tony over tips, so I picked it up. Tony's Pizza. How can I help you? Long pause. Static, like someone breathing too close to the receiver. Do you deliver to County Line Road? The voice was a woman's, I think, but it sounded muffled, like she was talking through gauze. I didn't even answer right away. Hello? Yeah, we do, I said finally. Can I get an address? Another pause. Then she gave me one. 1639 County Line, the house with the blue mailbox. That was weird. People usually just say the number and the street, but okay. I wrote it down. She wanted a large pepperoni, extra crispy, no drinks, paid cash. Total came out to $16.45. I repeated the order, she mumbled a yes, and that was it. When I told Tony the address, he frowned. County line, he said. That's past the edge of town. That road gets nasty in the rain. I shrugged. It's not that far. I've done worse. He waved me off, said to be careful and to keep the change if they tipped in coins. I packed up the pizza and hit the road. It took about 20 minutes to get out there. The street lights faded after the gas station, and then it was just me and my headlights slicing through fog and tree branches. County Line Road is one of those long, winding routes that feels like it wants to lead you somewhere you shouldn't go. No guardrails, no shoulders. Just woods, fields, and dead corn stalks leaning in like they want to whisper something. Eventually, I found the mailbox. Blue, just like she said. I pulled into the driveway. It wasn't a house so much as a farmhouse. 2 stories, white paint peeling off the siding, porch sagging like bad knees, no lights on, none. Not even in the windows, no car in the driveway either. I stayed in my car for a minute, checked the receipt again, 1639 County Line Road. It was the right place. I grabbed the pizza and got out. The air was wet and full of that weird smell like iron and dirt you only get way out in the sticks. I walked up the porch steps, creaky as hell, and knocked. Nothing. No footsteps, no shuffling. Just silence. I knocked again, this time louder. Finally I heard it. Footsteps, coming down the stairs inside the house. Slow, one at a time. Then, a pause. Then the door creaked open, maybe 4 inches. Not enough to see inside. Your pizza's here, I said, holding the box out in front of me like a shield. A hand reached through the crack. White, wrinkled, old. The hand dropped a crumpled 20 onto the porch, grabbed the pizza box, and pulled it back inside in one fluid motion. The door slammed shut. I stood there for a second. That was it? No thank you? No have a good night? Just the money and the hand? Then I heard something else. Crying. It started low. A woman's voice sobbing quietly. I leaned toward the door without really thinking. It wasn't coming from the person who took the pizza. It was deeper inside the house. And then, just as I was about to step back, someone whispered through the crack in the door, "Don't leave." I froze. What? But no one responded, and the crying stopped. I got back to my car so fast I barely remembered the steps. I didn't even count the change until I was halfway back to town. Only then did I realize the 20 was soaked. Not just damp, wet, like someone had dunked it in water and wrung it out. I tossed it into the passenger seat and didn't look at it again until I got back to the shop. When I walked in, Tony gave me a weird look. "Where'd you go?" "County Line, like I said." "No," he said. "You were gone almost an hour." I looked at the clock. It was 1:02 a.m. I left for the delivery at 11:58. Even with the distance, that didn't make sense. Then Jessie said something I still think about sometimes. "That address?" she said, scrolling through her phone. "Did she sound weird to you?" "Yeah." "Why?" She turned her phone to me. There was an old news article from 2014. The headline read, "Tragic fire kills 2 on County Line Road." Same address, 1639. It said a woman and her daughter died in a house fire. Electrical. They'd been trapped upstairs. The father, drunk, according to the report, escaped but was arrested weeks later for neglect. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, hearing that voice again. "Don't leave." I told Tony I couldn't do nights anymore. Told him it was about school. He didn't ask questions. A week later, I drove out there again. I had to. Call it curiosity. Call it stupidity. There was no house, just the blue mailbox. The rest was a field of ash and grass. I know what I saw. I know what I heard. Something wanted me there that night. And the part that keeps me awake the most, sometimes in the middle of the night, I swear, I still hear her crying. I've worked security most of my adult life. Not exactly the most glamorous gig, but it pays all right if you don't mind sitting alone all night, and sometimes that's exactly what you need. After I left the police force, medical retirement, long story, not one I enjoy telling, I couldn't stomach the idea of sitting behind a desk or being around crowds. So I ended up working third shift security for a private contractor here in Chicago. They stuck me wherever they needed a body. Warehouses, parking garages, even a junkyard once. But in early 2021, I got assigned to Station 13. That's not its official name. Officially, it's just Subterranean Maintenance Access Number 13, part of the decommissioned lower-level subway lines beneath the West Loop. Chicago's got a whole forgotten underbelly of transit projects they never finished or quietly shut down. Station 13 was one of them, a prototype stop from the 60s for an express line that never happened. They sealed it up sometime in the 80s. No trains run through it anymore, no electricity, no active cameras, no maintenance visits. It's basically a concrete tomb under the city, and for whatever reason, someone thought it needed guarding. My company landed a city contract to keep vagrants and urban explorers out of the place. There'd been a few incidents, graffiti, junkies, some stories about teenagers getting lost down there and needing rescue. So they posted someone on nights just to sit in the access booth and log any movement. I was that someone. I didn't mind the quiet. My name's Maria, by the way. I'm 39. I used to be a beat cop before an incident downtown left me with a permanent limp and a few diagnoses I'd rather not list. I still get nightmares from time to time, but the solitude helps. At least it used to. The first few weeks at Station 13 were peaceful, uneventful. My shift started at 9 p.m. I'd unlock the gate, climb down the stairwell, and sign in at the old ticket booth. The lights in the main corridor were long dead, but I had a big rechargeable lantern and a headlamp. I brought a thermos, a folding chair, a notebook, and sometimes a book if I felt brave enough to lose myself in fiction down there. There was only one working security camera, a motion-activated relic installed in the 90s and patched into a tiny black and white monitor inside the booth. It faced the main tunnel entrance where the stairs came down. That was it. The rest of the platform and tunnels were just darkness, cold, silent, heavy darkness. One night, must have been my third week, I noticed something strange. Around 2:30 a.m., the motion alert beeped. That in itself wasn't odd. Rats set it off. Occasionally dust did too if the air pressure shifted from above. But when I looked at the screen, someone was standing at the bottom of the stairs. I leaned closer. It was a man, mid-40s maybe, short-cropped hair, wearing a windbreaker and jeans. He just stood there facing the camera, not moving. Didn't walk closer, didn't call out, just stood. I opened the booth door and called down the platform. "Sir, you're trespassing. This station is closed." No answer. I grabbed my flashlight and took 2 steps out of the booth. "Sir?" When I shone the light down the tunnel, he was gone. I walked all the way to the stairwell. Shined my light up the steps. Nothing. Didn't hear a sound. The next morning, I reviewed the camera footage. It wasn't great quality, but he was definitely there. You could see him looking at the camera. But then something odd happened. The footage glitched. Just a blinker. And then he was gone. No footsteps. No walking away. Just there, then not. I reported it to my supervisor. He chalked it up to a technical error and told me to log it as a false positive. So I did, but it kept happening. Over the next 2 weeks, he showed up 5 more times. Always around 2:30, always standing perfectly still at the bottom of the stairs, never speaking, never moving, just watching. And every time I'd leave the booth and go to check, he'd be gone. The 5th time, I was ready. I had my phone recording the monitor and the booth door open so I could move fast. The second he appeared, I bolted out, ran as best I could with my limp, got to the stairs in less than 10 seconds. Empty. But I heard something. A shuffle. Not behind me. Below me. That night was the first time I noticed the grate. Near the edge of the platform, half covered in dirt and old caution tape, was a heavy steel hatch. I'd seen it before, but assumed it was a drain or sealed maintenance shaft. This time I noticed the air was moving. Not strong, but steady, like something below was breathing. I knelt down. The metal was cold. My lantern lit the rusted handle, and I saw scrape marks in the concrete, fresh ones, like it had been opened. Recently. The next night I brought bolt cutters. I wasn't supposed to, but curiosity got the better of me. The hatch had an old chain threaded through the lock loop, rusty but intact. I cut it. When I opened that hatch, the air that hit me was stale and sweet. Not like rot, more like antiseptic and old metal. Hospital air. There was a ladder leading down into complete black. I only climbed down 3 rungs before I chickened out and closed it again. But that was the beginning. After that, things got worse. The man stopped appearing on the monitor, but I heard whispers. At first, I thought it was my imagination. Working nights alone plays tricks on you, but it got clearer, stronger. A woman's voice, crying, sometimes pleading, always from the tunnel. I'd turn off my light and wait. Sometimes I'd hear footsteps, light ones, like a child. Other times, tapping, like metal on stone. Rhythmic, slow, deliberate. One night I brought a body cam from my police days. Not strictly legal, but I wanted proof. I walked the length of the platform, stopping near the grate. As soon as I turned back to return to the booth, my headlamp died. Completely dead. Even though I'd charged it an hour earlier. Then my lantern flickered. Then off. I was plunged into absolute black. The kind you only find underground. No stars, no light bleed, just pure dark. I stood there trying not to panic. That's when I heard it. A voice. Right behind me. You don't belong here. I spun around. Nothing. I ran, tripped, crawled into the booth and slammed the door. Locked it. I sat there until sunrise. When I reviewed the body cam, it cut out just before the voice. There's 30 minutes of black video with just faint audio. You can hear my breathing, my footsteps. And then, barely audible, you don't belong here. My supervisor didn't believe me, but he let me transfer sites. I didn't push it. 6 months later, I got a call from a friend still working that route. She'd heard rumors. A janitor had gone missing. Last seen near Station 13. Found his ID and flashlight near the grate. Police came. No statement. No media. Just closed the site indefinitely. I still wonder about that man. Why he came. Why he stared at the camera. Why the footage never showed him leaving. Sometimes I think about that grate, the air that moved from below. I don't work security anymore. And I never go near the West Loop after dark. Because I'm sure of one thing. Whatever was beneath Station 13, it wasn't human. And it's still there. For about 5 years, I worked the night audit shift at a cheap motel just off the interstate in northern Arizona. The kind of place you only stay at if your car breaks down or you're too tired to make it to Flagstaff. It was one of those franchise names you'd recognize, technically part of a chain, but barely hanging on. Faded carpet, flickering lobby lights, the constant smell of coffee that's been left on too long. I worked 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week. And I liked it that way. No traffic, no micromanaging supervisors, and I could read or write between guests. That's really why I took the job. I was trying to write a novel. One of those classic American things, you know? Guy with nothing left to lose writes about people with even less. I thought maybe I'd find inspiration working nights in a place where the drunks, the runaways, the broken families, and the lost souls passed through like ghosts. Most nights were slow. I'd check in a few people, do the books, refill the coffee, and maybe watch a movie on my phone if the Wi-Fi didn't cut out. It was a quiet job until room 112. I should start by saying the room wasn't special. It didn't have a view. No fancy features, same thin bedspread and noisy AC unit as all the others. But something about it never sat right with me. Every time I walked past it on the way to the linen closet or doing the 2 a.m. security sweep, I got this weird, crawling feeling at the back of my neck, like being watched through a keyhole. I never mentioned it to anyone because I didn't want to sound like a lunatic, but I avoided putting guests in 112 when I could. If someone requested a first floor room, I'd try to steer them to 110 or 114. I never made a big deal out of it, just nudged them elsewhere. But eventually someone would get assigned to it anyway, and when they did, things had a habit of going strange. The first time I noticed anything unusual was in February. A guy checked in just before midnight, mid-50s, quiet, didn't say much. He paid in cash, asked for something as far from the road as possible. I gave him 112. He nodded, took the key, and walked out into the cold. About 20 minutes later, I saw him again, standing outside the lobby, pacing. I opened the door. "Everything okay, sir?" He looked startled. Yeah. I think I'll head out. Change of plans." He didn't ask for a refund. Didn't even go back to get his bags. Just left. His key was on the sidewalk the next morning, like he dropped it without noticing. Weird, but people flake out. Happens more than you'd think. 2 nights later, an older woman checked in, traveling nurse, in town for a weekend gig. Sweet lady. Genuinely pleasant. I gave her room 106. At around 3:15 a.m., she came into the lobby looking pale as hell. "Is everything okay?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "I'm sorry, I know this is going to sound strange, but do you have any vacant rooms away from that hallway?" I checked the screen. "You mean the east wing?" She nodded. "Near 112. She said she'd heard voices, not yelling, not fight, pleading. A man's voice begging someone not to do something. Then silence. Then a thump. I called the room immediately. No answer. I walked her to a different room myself, gave her 203 upstairs. She didn't want to be alone on the first floor. The next morning, room 112 was empty, clean, undisturbed. I checked the logs. No one had stayed there in 3 days. I figured it was a pipe noise, maybe something in the walls. Old motels creak. They groan. But it started getting harder to explain. There were small things at first, guest complaints that lights flickered only in that room. The bathroom fan turning on and off by itself. One guy swore his phone kept unlocking itself while plugged in on the nightstand. Another said he heard knocking, not on the door, but from inside the closet. Maintenance checked the room twice. Nothing unusual, everything worked fine. Every outlet, every fixture, no water damage, no signs of vermin. But I started noticing something on the cameras. We had 6. 2 for the parking lot, 1 for the front desk, 1 for the rear entrance, and 2 for the hallways. Room 112 sat just in view of the east wing hallway cam. At least once a week I'd see motion there, blurred, hard to make out, but not like a person, like a shadow that moved against the light instead of with it. Once at around 4 a.m., I rewound the feed because I thought someone had tried to peek into the room. What I saw made my chest tighten. It was a shape, humanish, standing in front of the door. No features, just black, solid, but not quite there. Then it bent, like someone kneeling to look under the door, and disappeared. I replayed that clip maybe 30 times. I even downloaded it to my phone. I don't know why. I guess part of me thought maybe I was going nuts, but every time I watched it, I felt colder, like was feeding something. A few weeks later, we got a guy named Harold, construction worker. He booked for 5 nights, seemed decent enough. Got room 112 because everything else was full. The first night went fine. The second night I came in to start my shift and found Harold sitting in the lobby, wide-eyed, gripping a coffee like it was a lifeline. "You okay, man?" I asked. He shook his head. "Room's got something in it." "What do you mean?" He looked me dead in the eye and said, "There's a guy who comes out of the bathroom at exactly 2:17 a.m., doesn't say anything, just walks to the foot of the bed and stands there, not like a dream, like I'm awake and he's real." He said it happened both nights, same time, same expressionless stare. He even tried staying up the second night, waiting for it. Left the lights on, watched TV, drank coffee to stay sharp. At 2:17, the screen went black. The lights died, and the man came out of the bathroom. I asked him what the guy looked like. Harold said, "He looks like you, except wrong." That one stuck with me. Harold left that night, didn't ask for a refund, left the door wide open, lights on, TV still playing static. After that, I tried to avoid using room 112 altogether. I put it in the system as out of order and made up some story about plumbing, but every time the manager came to do inventory, she'd change it back to active. She didn't believe me. Nobody did. Then came the woman I won't forget. She checked in on a Tuesday, late 30s, thin, tired looking. Said her name was Renee, paid for 2 nights, paid in cash. I tried to steer her to another room, but she insisted on something close to the parking lot. Said she had bad knees. I gave her 108. She smiled, took the key, and walked out. 5 minutes later, she was back. Said she heard something weird. Said the room smelled like wet dirt. I gave her 112 against my better judgment. She nodded like she'd been waiting for it, like she already knew. That night, something changed. Around 1:45 a.m., the lobby phone rang. Caller ID, room 112. I picked up. Front desk, but there was no voice. Just breathing, and underneath it, a second sound, something like dragging fabric, like someone crawling across carpet. I said hello 3 times before I hung up. I checked the camera. The hallway was empty. I called back. No answer. Around 2:30, the fire alarm tripped, just for room 112. I sprinted down the hall. I knocked on the door. No response. I used the master key and stepped inside. The lights were on. The bed was made. No smoke, no fire, no scent of anything. But Renee was gone, vanished. Her purse was on the chair, phone on the nightstand, her shoes by the door. The bathroom light was on, but she wasn't in there. We searched the grounds, every room. The cameras never showed her leaving, not once. 1 minute she was in the room, the next, gone. Police got involved. They questioned me for hours. I told them everything about the voices, the shapes, the man at 217. They said she probably ran, but her ID and wallet were still here. Her car never left. They pulled the hallway footage, reviewed it frame by frame. Nothing, but the timestamp at 2:17 a.m. glitched. Just like before, just like with the man who disappeared. They never found her. That was 2 years ago. I left the motel 3 weeks later. Couldn't take it anymore. Every night I saw her room key in the drawer. Every time I passed room 112, I felt something pressing against the walls from the inside, like it wanted out. I tried to forget, but I can't, because last week I got a call from my old manager, just small talk, catching up, and she said something I can't stop thinking about. You remember that woman who vanished? Renee? Yeah. Yeah, I said. Well, last night someone checked into room 112 under that name. Same spelling. Same handwriting. She left the key on the desk, and inside the room, her purse was gone. If you've made it to the end, I want to say thank you. Not just for sticking through each story, but for giving your time, your attention, and maybe even a little piece of your imagination to the people and voices behind these Nightshift confessions. These stories weren't about monsters hiding in closets or ghosts floating through abandoned halls. They were about the quiet, unsettling horror of working alone while the rest of the world sleeps, where the flicker of a hallway light, a knock on the door, or a figure on a grainy monitor can take on a life of its own. Each person you heard from, Derek, Maria, James, and the unnamed security guard, was a reflection of a real fear, the kind that creeps up not with screams, but with silence. And whether their stories were a warning, a confession, or just someone finally saying, "I'm not crazy," they all had one thing in common. They were changed by what they saw. And maybe after hearing them, you are too. So wherever you are, at home, in your car, maybe even sitting in some dimly lit office on a night shift of your own, keep your eyes open. Trust the quiet. And remember, the scariest stories are the ones that just might be true. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe, stay aware, and don't ignore the things that go unnoticed by day.